Well, thank you everyone for attending. I'm not going to waste time because I have 20 minutes to talk about Power BI licensing, which is a fool's errand, but we're going to do it anyway, all right? My name is Eugene Meitinger, and I am a Power BI consultant, and I'm a Pluralsight author. So I get paid to teach difficult concepts in not a lot of time, so this should be great. My pronouns are he, him, and we're going to talk about Power BI licensing in 20 minutes or less. So let's start off with a question. So who here takes the bus or the train to work? Anybody? A couple people. All right, better question. Who used to ride the train or the bus to work? Yeah, okay, so a few more people before everyone started working in their pajamas. And so I've got another question, and this is going to sound a little bit silly. Which is cheaper? A bus or a bus pass, right? You're like, I took second grade arithmetic, I've got this. I know where this is going. I'm in IT, it depends, right? And so what it depends on is how many people are there, right? Because obviously, you know, at a certain point, you don't just give everyone bus passes. At a certain point, let's say you're Microsoft and you have a campus and nobody wants to use cars anymore or anything like that. At a certain point, you might just buy a bus. You might just buy a bus and pay £500,000 for how much they cost. They're very expensive. I've looked it up. And just give everyone free access to that bus, right? And so when it comes to Power BI licensing, it falls into two similar categories. There are two categories of Power BI licensing. Microsoft made it difficult with premium per user, and we'll get to that. They ruined my entire analogy. But in general, there's user licensing and there's capacity licensing, okay? So user licensing, you pay per user. It's a bus ticket. It's an Oyster card. It gets you around, but just you, okay? I saw on the little travel card I got, it says I'm not supposed to resell it, right? So I just imagine just giving it to someone and then the cops come and arrest me and I'm stuck in London for the next 2 years, right? So you pay per user, and so it's a lot like buying a bus pass, right? It's your ticket to dashboard in 5 minutes, instant insights, whatever Microsoft is saying about Power BI today, right? And it's $10 to $20 per month. I'm sorry, I probably could have converted it to pounds, but I'm lazy, so I didn't. And so it's affordable, right? That's like Netflix and maybe Hulu Plus, right? That's a manageable price. And user-based licensing is appealing in that way because you can grow organically, right? Like my experience with working just a tiny bit with Click and Tableau is you might be talking about paying tens of thousands of dollars or pounds for a server, and then, well, what if it doesn't get adoption, right? Well, you already bought that bus. And so the other type of licensing is capacity licensing. You're paying for the capacity, and it's a lot like buying a bus. If nobody rides on the bus, you still spent £500,000 on that bus. Or you can put as many people as you want in there as space will allow. Now, it's going to smell. Knees are going to be hitting people. It's going to be a bad time, but you can do it, right? Same thing with Power BI Premium. You may start running into performance issues, but go ahead. Put 2,000 users on it. We'll figure it out, right? And so this is a key point that confuses a lot of people. When you're paying for capacity licensing, you do not assign users, you assign content to the capacity, right? And so in a sense, you're licensing the content, the report, whatever it is, okay? And so this can get a little bit confusing. One rule of thumb I want you to start thinking in your mind is capacity licensing starts to be reasonable at around 250 to 500 users, depending on the type of license you go with, the type of features that you want to use. If you do not have 250 users, do not even look at capacity licensing, right? The one exception is report server, which we'll talk about, but even then, it's likely to be extremely expensive per individual user, okay? So this is your starting rule of thumb. If you don't have 250 people to shove on that bus, which is, I mean, we're probably talking about a cruise or something at this point, this big bus, don't even bother, okay? So user-based licenses. let's talk about the different types of user-based licenses available. The first one is free, and I believe the term folks use here is rubbish. This is rubbish. And the reason it's rubbish is with a free license, if you want to show beautiful reports about Titanic data or your daughter's lemonade stand, I don't know if you do that here, but in America, we'll make entrepreneurs out of kids by buying all the raw resources, and they get to keep all the money, right? So if your daughter has a lemonade stand and you want to show reports about how much money she earned, then this is great. But the moment you want to share your reports in a secure, confidential way, you need to pay money. That's how it is, okay? Now, free licenses are also useful if you pay for premium capacity, in which case they can be used to view the content. But by itself, a free license is, as they say, rubbish. The next type of license is Power BI Pro, and this is your starting point. If you are even thinking about a hint of the possibility of using Power BI, then I recommend looking at Power BI Pro first. It provides a majority of the features when it comes to Power BI. Most of the stuff when it comes to premium is usually about scaling up and out, okay? So this is going to meet 80 to 90% of the needs of most organizations, and it's especially ideal because you can just start small, grow out, and then whenever you have that 250 users, then you can switch to premium capacity. So it's $10 per month, and it's included in almost all Office 365 E5 SKUs, which is a mouthful, except for one of them. So if you've got E5, you probably have Power BI. Otherwise, it's fairly affordable. And then somewhat more recently, they added premium per user, which again messes up my entire analogy about tickets and buses, but we're going to struggle on anyway. And so premium per user is basically twice the cost of Pro. So you can get like an add-on license, or you can get just premium per user. But what it is it's still user-based licensing, but you get most of the premium capacity features. What you do not get are some of the like geo, multi-geo kind of stuff, so basically having your data in multiple places or all those sorts of things. But what do you get when it comes to premium per user? So what you get is, here's just a handful of things. You get 48 daily refreshes of your data. So this is a big deal because we're talking 30-minute refreshes, right? And so normally, whenever we're talking about Power BI Pro, you only get 8. So if you do it during working hours, that's 1 every hour. But with this, you can do it every 30 minutes. And thankfully, most business users' conceptualization of real-time data is sub-hour, right? And so if you pay a little bit for a premium per user, you can get real-time data as far as most businesses are concerned. Most businesses don't need sub-minute updates. You have a 100 gigabyte model size limit, right? And this is a huge, huge deal because with Pro, you're looking at 1 gigabyte model size limit. With Premium by default, you're looking at 10 gigabytes, but you can there's ways to expand that out. And so this should cover almost all of your needs, right? If you have a compressed data model that's over 100 gigabytes, because when it comes to the DAX engine, I've seen 5 to 10x compression. If you're going over 100 gigabytes, you've got bigger problems. And there's probably a session here this week that can help you, right? So that should meet all of your needs. You get incremental refresh, which is amazing. Because again, if you've got a 100 gigabyte data model, you do not want to be importing 100 gigabytes every 30 minutes, right? That's how you just destroy your bandwidth. But with incremental refresh, you can pull up just the latest data for a given day or what have you. And then finally, we have paginated reports. So paginated reports, if you ever worked with SQL reporting services, it's SSRS reports, but they filed off the serial numbers. SSRS is a bad word now. We're not allowed to say it. It never happened. We have paginated reports. They're reports that have page numbers, and you can print them out. But it's SSRS. So those are some of the premium features. A lot of the premium features, what you find is about scaling up and out, okay? We want to support more users, more types of reports, larger data models, all those sorts of things. Now, there's a problem, and I found a way to finagle this back into my analogy. The premium per user folks ride alone, okay? You don't get to ride with anyone else. You're in first class or what have you, but you ride alone. And so here's this chart from the documentation on premium per user, right? And the problem is this. If we look at, okay, what if a premium per user person is a creator? No one can use their content. Free users can't use their content. Pro users can't use their content. You're basically making content for your clique of friends who all have premium per user, right? Now, there are situations where this makes a ton of sense. Like, so an example I saw this week was if you're doing development pipelines, then you can have a dev and test that's just premium per user, and you're not paying for the capacity, you're not hitting your premium capacity, but then you have premium capacity for production, right? But just be aware, yes, you get to level up, as we might say with the theme of the conference, but you're by yourself. The cool thing, though, is you get to consume everyone else's content. Someone makes a report, you get to read it. They make a report, you get to read it, barring whatever security kind of permissions you have or anything like that, right? So just be aware of that, is even though you get all these features, you are now in a situation where either you have to license all of the consumers, all of the viewers of your reports with premium per user, or you have to be very, very smart about how you make use of those licenses. So be careful, because it's twice the cost of a pro license. So capacity-based licenses, right? We talked about buying a bus ticket. Here's when you buy the bus. And there's 2 to 5 of these, depending on how you count. So the first is Power BI Report Server. This is basically SQL Server Report Server plus Power BI features. Again, I'll probably get in trouble for saying that, but literally, I did a demo for one of my courses way back, and I was looking at the JavaScript, and there was like an Angular JavaScript flag for like SSRS or Power BI Report Server for the branding, right? So it's a lot of the same technology, but it has a bunch of cool features that you don't get in SSRS. And the licensing, the way you accomplish that, is different, right? The way you get Power BI Report Server is one of 2 ways. Either you get Power BI Premium and you're paying $5,000 per month anyway, and they're like, well, have some free core licenses of Power BI Report Server to help stair-step your way to it. Or you only have to pay for SQL Server Enterprise Edition cores plus software assurance. So just a few tens of thousands of dollars, right? So this is not cheap. I recommend Power BI Report Server under one of 2 circumstances only. The first is you already have a significant investment, both in terms of skill and reports, in SQL Server reporting services. If you are making extensive use of SSRS today, then go ahead and do Power BI Report Server, because all of that skill and expertise will transfer over. The security model, the deployment model, everything, okay? So I highly recommend that. The other is you're just not allowed to say the word cloud, right? You're in a heavily regulated industry, and you're not even allowed to put your data into the cloud. If you're in one of those 2 situations, it makes sense. The other type of license is Power BI Premium. And the problem is, I love Power BI. I love the Power BI team. But they have decided to take an agile approach, right? They're putting out new features every month. But that means they're putting out a new licensing model every 6 months, right? And so we get confusion on a regular basis, especially around the word embed. Because there's Power BI Embedded, and then there's Power BI for embedding, and then there's SharePoint embedding and all this kind of stuff. But the key thing you need to know is Power BI Premium is the default capacity-based licensing, and there's 3 levels. The A tier is for application embedding, commercial application. If you are selling software to someone else, you have to use the A tier, and you provision it in Azure, okay? You are not allowed to use the A tier for internal production reporting, okay? You can use it for dev tests, that's fine, but if you're deploying purely for internal purposes, you are not permitted to use the A tier. I want to be clear about that. The EM tier is for Office 365 embedding. So basically, the way that I think about it is you get most of the features and functionality of Premium, but none of the PowerBI.com experience. So if you want to embed it in Teams, you want to embed it in SharePoint, you want to embed it in your intranet, go hog wild, okay? And then you have the P tier for the full Power BI experience. And so let's take a quick look at pricing here. So the A tier ranges from about $735 per month to like $24,000 pretty much. It covers the full gamut. And thankfully, you can turn it on and off. okay? You don't have to run it that whole time. So for dev test and for learning, it is amazing. You run it for a few minutes, you get billed for a few minutes, or maybe an hour. I forget the granularity. The EM tier starts at $625 per month if you talk to your sales rep, and can go up to $2,500. And so that's why I say, okay, start thinking around 250 users, because 2,500 divided by 10, 250, okay? And then the P tier starts at $5,000 per month and only goes up. I originally had it 5,000, 20,000, and then I think Alex and Arvidsson tweeted me, and he's like, you know it gets more expensive, right? So there's a plus symbol because you can ask Microsoft, can I give you more money, right? So there's one final gotcha, and this frustrates me immensely. I know it's consistent, but it still bothers me. You have to pay for the bus driver too. So if you are giving Microsoft $5,000 per month for premium, but you want to hit the publish button to publish a report, from a licensing perspective, you have to have Power BI Pro or Premium per user. You have to be licensed to hit that publish button. Even if you are giving Microsoft $24,000 a month, I mean, I'm sure in the sales negotiation, they're like, can you give us some licenses? But on the sales page, it's not $5,000 per month, it's $5,010 per month for premium, right? So this always frustrates me because it doesn't make sense to me, but it is consistent. That no matter, even if you're publishing the report server, you're gonna have to license the bus driver. So finally, I've made a flow chart to make everyone's life simple. Which licensing model do we want? Are you selling commercial software to other people? You want the A tier of Power BI Premium, okay? Are you either heavily invested in SRS or you're not allowed to say the word cloud? You want Power BI Report Server. Do you have over 250 users? You want to look into the EM or P tiers. They are likely to save you money, but they may not, okay? And then finally, do you need premium features such as larger data models? If so, then you want premium per user. And then by default, most people are going to be looking at Pro. And then, like I said, if you want to hit the publish button, if you want to publish your report, no matter how much money you're giving Microsoft, then you're going to need either Pro or a premium per user license, okay? So I'll give people like 1 minute to get that screenshot so they can take it back to their boss. I'll be putting these on Session Eyes, and I'm sure the slides will be available. But that's my talk. I would love some feedback to know how well I did. Thank you, everyone, for attending. We've got about 2 minutes, so probably 1 or 2 questions if anyone has any.
Question from online.
Yeah, please.
You said the 250 to 500 users.
Yes.
Is that report builders or users you need to share reports?
Great question. So is the 250 to 500 users report builders or people need to consume? Power BI makes no distinction between those two types of users when it comes to licensing, aside from hitting the publish button. So that is basically consumers, but it's all users in all totality, right? Basically, what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, the high end of the EM SKU is 2,500, the low end of the P SKU is 5,000. Let's divide that by 10, because that's the cost of a pro license, and that's my rule of thumb kind of metric. But as far as cost and licensing, Power BI makes no distinction between a report, a user, or a producer, unlike other, like Tableau makes a distinction, right? So great question, thank you. Does anyone else have a question? Yes, please.
Yeah, if you've got a data flow on a PPU premium,
Yeah.
can it be consumed by a data set in a pro workspace?
So the question is, if you have a data flow with a PPU user, can it be consumed in a regular data set? So the short answer is I don't know. I believe the answer is yes, but please feel free to reach out and follow up with me, and I'll be happy to find out the answer for you. So that's a great question. Oh, I don't have my contact information. I'm at SQLGene on Twitter and Eugene at SQLGene.com.
One more question.
Oh, yes, please.
What if you're paying for Azure analysis services?
So the question is, what if you are paying for Azure analysis services? So the answer to that is as far as it's concerned, it's a data source, right? So at that point, I probably wouldn't look into paying for premium, because a lot of the benefit you get is those larger data models and that sort of thing. But as far as licensing is concerned, you're still going to be paying for pro licenses most likely. because you still want all of that functionality. You still want to be able to publish. You still want to be able to consume. So if you're using AAS, it's a great data source. It's an alternative to Power BI Premium in terms of storing your data, but you're most likely going to at least have to look at Pro, and you may do Premium, but probably not. So, all right, well, thank you everyone for attending. I really appreciate your time.